Hello, I'm Reggie Leffler, Mason County Commissioner, Precinct 1, and this is Texas County Voice, a podcast for all 254 counties. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome to Texas County Voice. I'm Jody Sebring with the Texas Association of Counties. The spring 2025 issue of County Magazine is available now on county.org, and if you haven't received your printed copy in your county, it will arrive any day now. And with me is the managing editor of County Magazine to talk about this new issue, Mary Huber. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you for having me on here. I'm excited to talk about this issue. There's a lot of interesting stories and content in it.
Yeah, it's a particularly strong issue. Let's start with the cover. Tell us about the cover story.
Yeah, so the cover story is about hurricane preparation, which is timely. June 1st is the start of hurricane season, so it runs through November, and we talked to some coastal counties about what they do to prepare, which actually they never stop preparing. It's kind of an all-year process for them. So we talked to Galveston County and Harris County, their emergency management coordinators, and they give a lot of good tips for counties of things that they could do and implement, that not even just for hurricanes, for all disasters. So things that would be helpful in wildfires or winter storms. So very relevant, not just to coastal counties, and also has some really good tips for individuals. So how to prepare for hurricanes, what to have on hand. So good.
Like a go bag or
bag.
survival supplies.
Which you should always have for
emergency
everything.
supplies, I should say. Survival sounds a little too ominous, but yeah, it's emergency supplies.
Yes, emergency supplies for everything, which, you should have at all times for any kind of situation, but it gives you some good information about that. So the National Weather Service should give their outlook soon for this hurricane season.
Oh, right.
So hopefully it will be a calm one. So
Yeah, hope so. Last legislative session, so the 2023 session, the legislature appropriated money for building and renovating state mental hospitals. And that's also one of the big stories in this issue.
yeah, we look at that, the progress of, what that money has been used for, large amount of it being used to build new mental health hospitals because there's a shortage of mental health beds in the state, and it's been an issue for a long time. So there's about 1,300 new beds planned right now being constructed in hospitals across the state. So we talked to some of the counties about the status, of the construction, and when some of them will break ground, when some of them will open, and how it's really going to address some huge needs across the state.
This isn't the first time you've been on the podcast. You've done, I don't know, 3 episodes now?
Yeah,
4 maybe?
3, yes.
Or you've been part of 3 or 4 episodes?
I've been here that long, so it seems.
So regular listeners will recognize Mary from just a couple of weeks ago when you interviewed Williamson County death investigator Valerie Alvarez about a Jane Doe case that she was involved with. And that also is part of the magazine, that story of how she identified this Jane Doe. So tell us a little bit about that one. It's a really fascinating story.
Yeah, it's an interesting case and an interesting look into what death investigators do, across Texas. And in this case in particular, Valerie had worked in Collin County before she was in Williamson County and was the death investigator there. And they decided, a couple years ago to reopen some old cases of unidentified persons that they had found over the years. And I think at the time there were 7. And this woman was one of them. She had been found hit by a car on a rural road, and obviously, no one ever figured out who she was. And 20 years later, they picked up this case, and they had taken fingerprints at the time, but the databases were obviously really different then. And they were able to input those fingerprints in a new database and got a name for her, but there was she had had many aliases over the years, so they weren't able to get, firm clarification on who she was. And so I won't ruin this story.
Yeah, no, yeah, I try to avoid spoilers.
No spoilers. Spoiler alert.
Someone asked me when I was describing this, the podcast episode that you did, because it's a really great episode. And the story's a really great story, too. They very much complement each other. But they asked after I was describing the episode, so is this a true crime? They were very excited. Is this a true crime episode? I was like, not exactly.
It's not a crime,
maybe true crime adjacent. But it's just a fascinating look at, because I've always, in fact, the genesis of this story, the origins of this story is a conversation we were having. I had heard about a case in Harris County where a homeless person had been found dead and had no ID on him. And it's like, well, how do counties go about identifying people, dead people without identifications? Because this must happen all the time, right?
Yeah, happens, yeah.
Statewide, but especially in the large counties, but statewide. And one thing led to another, and you discovered this case in Collin County and Valerie Alvarez.
Yeah, and it's obviously, so anytime, someone loses a family member and they're never able to find out where that person went, or
even if they're still alive,
and put them to rest, so obviously it's something that really obviously weighs on death investigators, across the state when they're not able to identify someone. So in this, instance in Collin County, they were really committed to trying to name, find names for these 7 people. And I know it was a really, huge moment for Valerie, and she shares about that, and also just in general about her work and what the day-to-day looks like, for people that work as death investigators, which I think a lot of people don't know very much about.
Yeah, this is not television. Mm-hmm.
No, it's not. It's not CSI.
It's not a neatly wrapped up 45-minute or 52-minute, however long a network, a 1-hour episode is. Yeah.
So, obviously this one, was solved 20 years later, so not a 45-minute episode.
But yeah, not to spoil it, listen to Mary's interview with Valerie Alvarez and read the story, and you'll get the complete picture between the two. Although both standalone.
Check out either one.
Better yet, check out both.
Check out both, yeah.
The magazine, speaking of the podcast and the magazine, a regular feature of every issue is a segment, a feature we call Voices of County Government. And this issue's voice is Grimes County Judge Joe Falth. And that's a Q&A that spins out of a podcast interview I did with Judge Falth. I think it was back in March. And very interesting man with a really interesting background and journey into county government. And so, is there another story you'd like to highlight for us, Mary?
Well, actually, I'll kind of turn this over to you. There's a legislative update in there, and I know you've been following that closely, so.
Well, you and I are both former newspaper journalists, used to daily deadlines. The magazine has different deadlines. They happen a little earlier than the publication appears. Mm-hmm. So the nature of the magazine and the magazine deadline, I wasn't able to go into a lot of detail. So those details, I would just encourage listeners to go to county.org, look under the legislative tab, find County Issues, our weekly newsletter that we put out during the session for the latest action at the legislature. And then on our YouTube channel, you'll find a video, Tack on the Ledge. Our latest Tack on the Ledge video will also bring you right up to date. And then, of course, once the session is over, here on the podcast and in the magazine,
and in print,
we will do wrap-up episodes and wrap-up stories, and we will summarize as best we can everything that happened that affects counties at the legislature. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and then the summer issue.
The summer issue, which
August
will
1st.
come out around the 1st of August.
Yeah.
And also, if you haven't registered already, register for our legislative conference, which happens at the end of August. And you can register on county.org. Search our calendar of events. Well, Mary, no, wait a minute. We're not ready to wrap up yet. Because I want to talk about another regular feature in each issue.
We can't forget this one.
Yeah. Chet Garner. He writes a really nice feature for us in each issue that, how would you describe it? It's like,
he's just traveling across the state, sharing some
quirky things, interesting things,
unknown tidbits,
oddities about Texas and Texas history. And the latest one resonated with me because it's kind of deals with my neck of the woods of Texas. And it's the story of Old Rip from Eastland County. And just to summarize, Eastland County, when they built the courthouse, they put a time capsule in the cornerstone. A few decades later, they're renovating the courthouse, and they removed the time capsule from the cornerstone. Oh, and they had put a horn toad, or horny...
Important piece of history.
Or horny toad, as we call them in West Texas, in the time capsule. So when they open this time capsule, like 25, 30 years later, the horny toad is still alive. And so they name it Old Rip after Rip Van Winkle.
And you can still see it today.
Yeah, like the embalmed body of linen. It's lying there.
So you'll have to make a visit to Eastland County.
Yeah, Eastland County. But Mary, I have to add one little detail.
Yeah, I think you passed this info along to me, and it's important. We all, yeah.
And you're like, you wish I would stop. But Old Rip, any fan of Warner Brother cartoons, and we all love Warner Brother cartoons, right?
Yep.
One of the best Warner Brother cartoon is One Froggy Evening. It's about a construction worker dismantling a building, finding a time capsule, opening it up, and inside is a frog that jumps out, puts on a little top hat and a cane, and starts singing. And that story was inspired by Old Rip.
Reminiscent.
Yes.
Of the Eastland County legend.
Eastland County's contribution to Warner Brothers history. That's all I gotta say.
And that's the perfect place to end about this issue.
Yeah, so read County Magazine, available now on county.org. And your print copy is on its way if it's not there already. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
I guess we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Next issue.
Next issue. August.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
You've been listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast from the Texas Association of Counties about the people, issues, and all things important to Texans and Texas counties. To learn more about Texas counties and the Texas Association of Counties, visit county.org.